The strategy as far as India is concerned has been no different from the African experience. That's been the same experience there as well. Demonize indigenous traditions. Call them the devil. Call them the Satan. Shame them when it comes to their traditions and beliefs. And when the cup is empty, and it has been emptied of local thought, you fill it with foreign thought. Apart from the fact that since their parents have not taken an interest in teaching them their own traditions, they have no clue as to where they come from and what their roots are, so they automatically subscribe to the comfortable notion of atheism as opposed to subscribing to something whose logic they don't understand. The point I'm trying to make is, one generation or two generations have already made the mistake of not passing on their traditions and roots to their children. If it continues at this rate, all in the name of liberalism, they'll do what they wish to do. I leave it entirely to their own devices. You will find a situation where 80% of this country has opened itself up to all sorts of influences from outside, good, bad, and ugly. And you will have absolutely no control over how the society changes subsequently. And there will come a point where you'll ask yourself, how did this come about? I'm 32. When I visited Sabarimala in 98, I was 13. I would have never guessed that in 20 years, I would face a situation where bursting firecrackers had become such a taboo, and Sabarimala would be the center of such an ugly controversy. In a span of 13 years, this is the change. Dahi Handi is out on its way. Firecrackers during Diwali is out on its way. God knows what else will find an exit option. This is the pace at which things have changed. Sabarimala, at the very least, has a recorded history of 300 years. At the very least. There are gazetteers and books written by Britishers where they've recorded that this is the practice that women who've attained puberty and who still are in the period of menarche cannot enter that particular institution, cannot enter the temple. So there is a recorded history of at least 300 years. So something which has survived for over 300 years stands set aside today by judicial intervention. In one fell swoop, it's gone. But we are trying to revive it. We'll see what can be done. But all I'm trying to tell you is the pace at which things are changing. Change is constant and change is good. That's what Bhagavad Gita says. But you have to decide whether it is change for the good or change for the worse. That's the question as a society you have to ask yourself. Unfortunately, this community is in deep slumber. It has slept for long enough. God knows what is the reason for the slumber. We keep sleeping over and over again when it comes to these institutions. Since these questions have not been raised over the last 2 generations, people like me have had to step up. And since nobody has asked a question for the last 2 generations, that status quo has become acceptable. So when I ask these questions, I look like the idiot. Why is he asking these questions? Nobody is bothered to ask these questions. We are perfectly comfortable with the situation. Asking for removal of non-Hindu employees from Tirumala Tirupati Devasthanam. Do you find it wrong if I say that only Hindu employees must work in Hindu institutions? There are close to 42 employees who are in every level of the institution. I am not saying only Hindu employees must work in state institutions, but at the very least I have a right to say in Hindu institutions only Hindus should work and they should benefit. Or would you use even secularism to say even that is a bigoted position? Is it possible for a Hindu to become a minority welfare minister? Is it possible for a Hindu who professes and practices the Hindu faith to become the head of a Waqf board? Do you have absolutely any say in how the bishop or the diocese chooses to deal with the property of the Christian community? If these basic questions are bigoted, and it is the Hindu who sees this position as bigoted, I pity him because he is digging his own grave or her own grave. Unfortunately, if I were to raise these questions before members of other communities, take it from me that I will find more acceptance from them, because then I will say, you interfere with me, I will interfere with you. So they will immediately say, you stay within your own territory. But it is the Hindu who will be the first person to object to my position. So there is no point in blaming anybody else. There is a problem with your indoctrination. There is a problem in the manner in which you've been brainwashed for generations. Don't blame the schools for their education, because then you're effectively saying that schools are responsible for upbringing. We are only responsible for conception and delivery. You have had the child, so the children are yours. They are not the wards of the state. So as far as teaching is concerned, don't limit it or exclusively to the schools. Take an active interest in what is it that your child is learning. If textbooks are teaching nonsense and parents don't take an interest, they will assume that parents also endorse that nonsense. And if that brainwashing starts at this age, he will have absolutely no problems with anybody interfering with the Hindu state, with the Hindu institution. Is this unreasonable? Is this illogical? Am I saying something that is communal? Am I saying something that is fascist? Am I saying something that is bigoted? Logic is perhaps the better way to approach a proposition as opposed to emotion and rhetoric. So I'm merely testing the validity of my proposition on the basis of logic. I want parity in treatment. I want equality in treatment. The Supreme Court is so obsessed with equality these days. I'm asking for equality in treatment. Whether or not they understand the practice of that particular temple, they have chosen to impose equality in the most unequal manner possible, in the most discriminatory manner possible. I am asking for the same equality to be applied as far as this group of institutions are concerned. I'll give you a simple statistic. And I've discussed this in detail in multiple places, but I'll give you this statistic. There are close to 39,000 temples in the state of Tamil Nadu alone. And there are over 400 temples which have been notified by UNESCO as places of heritage, world heritage, global heritage. Out of these 39 temples, 38,265 temples are under government control. So is this the assumption that 38,265 temples require the presence of the state? And do you know what is the income of these places? Less than 10,000 a year. That is less than 800 rupees a month. What corruption are you talking of in an institution that can't even earn 800 rupees a month? What business does an executive officer or the state officer have in such an institution? So there is only a point to which you can constantly blame others for your own mistakes, your own weakness, and your own inability to stand up for your traditions. But you can't stand up for your own traditions because you don't know your own traditions. As I said, the caveat is, I am not a religious person, but I see an intrinsic value in all of this. I see a value in all of this because all of this plays a role in the shaping of identity. Individual identity and societal identity and collective identity.